Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. After accusing NVIDIA's China-specific H20 chips of being unsafe, not advanced, and not environmentally friendly, CCTV has further claimed that NVIDIA's computing chips already have mature tracking, positioning, and remote shutdown technologies. Citing cybersecurity experts, it stated that the US leaves backdoors in chips, likening it to a seller secretly installing an electronic lock in a smart door lock. The Sharp Sword program on the National Defense and Military Channel of China Media Group stated that as a globally renowned chip company, NVIDIA holds a monopoly in the field of high-end computing chips. From a technical perspective, NVIDIA's technologies for computing power, chip tracking and positioning, and remote shutdown have long been mature. The Sharp Sword program further pointed out that there are mainly three types of backdoors. The first is maliciously embedded, which is like having an insider installed in the device. The manufacturer can directly control the device through remote commands, such as turning on the camera and uploading video data without the user's knowledge. The second type is post-production cracking. Manufacturers set up remote access interfaces, but due to poor management or being cracked by third parties, the backdoor becomes a tool for stealing secrets. The third type is covert implantation. Criminals secretly activate backdoors during device use by contaminating the original codebase, tampering with software update packages, or implanting malicious code at points along the supply chain. Chinese cybersecurity expert Yan Huaiji says, simply put, when the US leaves a backdoor in a chip, it's like a buyer secretly installing an electronic lock inside a smart door lock. This lock can silently open the door to your home at any time, or even lock the door completely. Essentially, it's like inserting an invisible insider into the chip, which can follow US commands to steal data or force a shutdown. The Sharp Sword program also points out that this is a typical example of technological hegemony. In the past, the United States controlled the world through military power, but now it is trying to achieve the same goal using invisible tools like chips, software, and the internet. The Sharp Sword program further notes that if backdoor technology is abused, the consequences could be as severe as having the first remote control of a nation's lifeline fall into someone else's hands. Americans could cut off electricity at any time, paralyze communications, or even control military equipment. Earlier, Chinese authorities and media had already raised concerns about the risk of backdoors in the H20 chip, claiming that this chip could enable remote shutdown functions and labeling it as unsafe, not advanced, and not environmentally friendly. NVIDIA, however, has denied these allegations. Earlier, the American technology media outlet The Information cited two sources reporting that after the Chinese government restricted corporate procurement, NVIDIA had already informed some component suppliers to suspend production of the H20 chip. Reuters also quoted informed sources as saying that NVIDIA plans to launch its latest B30A chip in China, which is based on the Blackwell architecture and will outperform the H20. On August 22, when asked about the B30A chip, NVIDIA founder Jensen Huang said that NVIDIA is negotiating with the US government regarding the follow-up products to the H20 chip for the Chinese market. But this is not a decision the company can make on its own. In fact, in the face of US technology restrictions, although China has long urged the US to lift export controls, after US President Trump unexpectedly approved the sale of NVIDIA's H20 chips to China last month, CNN noticed that the Chinese side's reaction was not celebratory at all, but rather noticeably indifferent. In an earlier report, CNN suggested that this unusual attitude reflects China's commitment to building a self-sufficient semiconductor supply chain, as well as its confidence in the rapid progress made by its own chip industry. However, at the same time, despite China's significant progress in the semiconductor sector and frequent reports of breakthroughs in domestically developed chips, China still has a demand for more advanced AI processors that are subject to US export controls. Xiang Ligang, a well-known observer of China's communications industry and chairman of the Zhongguancun Information Consumption Alliance, said that since Trump first launched a technological blockade against China during his first term, China's chip technology has made great strides. Ironically, this progress has been driven by the frustration caused by the US continually tightening export controls. He said, "Our ability is not as they imagine, that if China is blockaded, we will be unable to function or will become complacent." For some time now, the US has been imposing export controls on China, while at the same time claiming that allowing Chinese companies continued access to American technology is in its national interest. Not only has the policy on exporting special versions of chips to China been repeatedly changed, but some products have also been summoned for talks by the Chinese side after being exposed for serious security issues. Ligang pointed out that China believes the US approach is clearly unfair. He said that the things we truly want, the US refuses to sell to us, while those products the US considers outdated, they want to dump them into our market and take over our market share. He retorted to the CNN reporter, "Do you really think we are that naive? The changes in US policy precisely highlight the importance of having a fully self-developed chip supply chain." Ligang said that for Chinese companies, if we want to ensure a relatively secure supply of chips, we may have only one option: to rely on chips produced by ourselves. In mid-July, NVIDIA founder and CEO Jensen Huang announced during his third visit to China that the US had approved the sale of the H20 chip to China. However, it was later revealed that the US government was charging a 15% commission on chip exports to China, which caused widespread shock and confusion. American politicians and security officials were also in a frenzy over the sudden policy shift regarding the H20 chip. In an interview, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Rodney claimed that allowing Chinese companies to continue using American technology is in the best interest of the United States. The United States hopes to stay one step ahead of China in technology so that China will continue to purchase American semiconductors and buy enough of them. On July 31st, in order to safeguard the cybersecurity and data security of Chinese users, the Cyberspace Administration of China summoned NVIDIA, requiring the company to explain the security risks of vulnerabilities and backdoors in the H20 computing power chips sold to China and to submit relevant supporting materials. The Asia Group, a lobbying firm co-founded by former U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell, told U.S. media that this meeting with NVIDIA by the Chinese side was more of a warning regarding its future products. George, partner and co-chair of digital business at this lobbying firm, said that the Chinese side wants to make it clear that they are buyers, not blindly obedient purchasers. Experts say that China's rapid progress in the field of semiconductor technology cannot be underestimated. Lin Qingyuan, a senior analyst specializing in China's semiconductor industry at research firm Bernstein, said that the increasingly stringent export controls imposed by the United States over the years have injected both a sense of urgency and new opportunities into China's drive for independent innovation. Bernstein predicts that by 2027, the proportion of domestically produced AI chips in China will soar from 17% in 2023 to 55%. While the share held by American suppliers such as NVIDIA and AMD will drop from 83% to 45%. Ma Rui, founder of investment consulting firm Top of China and an AI expert, also led a team in July this year to conduct on-site research into the development of AI in China. He told Fortune magazine in the United States that although he is not an energy expert, after attending numerous conferences and communicating with many industry professionals, he reached a chilling conclusion. China already has more than enough power supply for its data centers. When sharing his observations on social platform X, he mentioned that in China, this is regarded as an issue that has already been resolved. This stands in stark contrast to the United States, where the development of AI is increasingly tied to debates over data center power consumption and grid limitations. On August 14th, Fortune magazine pointed out that Ma Rui's remarks seem to suggest that he believes the race may already be over. In response to the U.S. government's chip export control measures aimed at suppressing China, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Commerce previously emphasized that China believes the U.S. should abandon zero-sum thinking and continue to lift a series of unreasonable trade restrictions against China. Mutually beneficial cooperation between China and the U.S. is the right path. Suppression and containment lead nowhere. The spokesperson also said that China hopes the U.S. will work together with China, correct its wrong practices through equal consultations, create a favorable environment for mutually beneficial cooperation between enterprises of both sides, and jointly safeguard the stability of the global semiconductor production and supply chain. To briefly summarize a few observations, first, although Trump approved H20 to continue supplying China, anti-China politicians in the US are still loudly insisting on tracking these high-tech products to prevent them from being used for military purposes. Moreover, the H20 is a low-spec version but comes with a high-end price tag. It's obvious they're targeting Chinese companies selling something that's neither secure nor reasonably priced. As Ligang said, the Chinese are not fools. A series of recent measures by China are meant to force American companies to provide safe products to Chinese enterprises at reasonable prices. Second, the repeated exposure by central media of the H20's security issues is also meant to remind domestic companies that the mainland is actually highly market-oriented, and since domestic AI chip production capacity still can't keep up with demand, there is still a tendency to seek out American products like those from NVIDIA. CNN reported that some research institutions estimate that if it weren't for Trump's export restrictions, this year the US would ship 1.5 million chips to mainland China, generating about $23 billion in revenue. The main buyers include tech giants such as ByteDance, Alibaba, and Tencent. Therefore, it is necessary for Chinese authorities to once again remind Chinese companies to pay attention to security. Third, the repeated criticism of NVIDIA by central media is meant to send a signal to the United States. China does not want stripped-down versions of technology products. What it wants are the most advanced versions available globally. Chinese people should not have to pay high prices for downgraded versions, otherwise these products simply shouldn't enter the Chinese market.